Welcome to part 3 of the series covering my trip to the 2023 Narrow Gauge Convention in Denver, Colorado. For the first part, we'll take a look at some of the modular layouts on display at the actual convention center. We begin with the Ophir module group, which models the Ophir Loop section of the Rio Grande Southern in 1:1 scale in HON3. Up next, we see the Oklahoma modular group, whose HON3 layout is a point-to-loop setup. Close to my own layout, the Slim Gauge Guild had set up their modules, which were very highly detailed and consisted of a long, narrow setup along one of the walls. A Denver and Rio Grande Western C16 consolidation leads merchandise freight on the Oklahoma modular layout. Next, we see an upgraded Ken Kidder consolidation pulling a short freight on the Slim Gauge Guild. Back on the Oklahoma layout, we see an earlier model K27 pulling a long manifest freight. There were a few smaller OM30 modular displays as well, such as this simple layout with a Hyce hauling logs, a Climax pulling a small merchandise train, and a Mogul pulling a Colorado and Southern passenger train. On the top loop, a porter crosses a figure 8 with a string of war cars. Among the larger groups present at the convention was the nearsighted narrow gaugers, whose modular setup was very highly detailed indeed, with many inspirations clearly taken from the likes of John Olson and Malcolm Furlow. A CNS Mogul leads a short train over a high trestle. It's the Thursday of the convention, and the layouts open on this particular day were located to the west of Denver. My first stop was Gary Wattenberg's HO and HON3 layout, located high in the mountains above Idaho Springs. It was a treacherous drive via winding dirt roads, but boy was it worth it. It is clear that Gary takes a lot of inspiration from Malcolm Furlow, John Olson, and George Sellios. His layout is definitely freelance and loosely models bits of the Colorado and Southern, as well as various other logging and mining operations, and really anything that he desires.
You can see it's got the saw filers in the top. Yeah. Well, this whole thing, you know, let me show it. I'll show it to you this way.
Oh wow, look at that.
Oh wow. Yeah, these are so intricate. I mean, well, there's some of these kits are awesome. Like I say, I've done some scratch building, but most of them are kits.
Is this like a master creation?
This is a master creation. That's the Coon Gap Sawmill.
Yep.
You remember it?
Yep.
That's what that is.
Okay.
It's the Coon Gap Sawmill by Master Creations.
Nice.
And this is a Master Creations sawdust burner here. And then this one I...
Gary also makes good use of automation on the layout with some of the point-to-point lines of his HO and HON3 trackage.
Well, I was using it as a water, just as a water barrels, you know. You can use it however you want, because they had vinegar. I have a kit.
Aside from the main layout, Gary also has two smaller layouts in HON3 and HON30 respectively. This is the small HON30 display, consisting of a mining scene with a small town and a little mining train going around the scene. The HON3 display is essentially a switching layout, more akin to the time saver than anything else. There is an engine facility, a few industry sidings, and a large trestle above the scene for displaying equipment. After another harrowing drive down switchbacking dirt roads, it was off to Mike Horner's HON3 layouts located in Idaho Springs. This layout models various parts of the Denver and Rio Grande Western, Denver South Park and Pacific, and Rio Grande Southern. On the RGS section of the layout, we see a K-27 leading a short freight down the Ophir Loop. As you can tell by the sound, this layout is DC analog control and makes use of PFM sound in the locomotives. It was my first time seeing a PFM sound unit in actual operation on a model railroad, and it was a great opportunity as well to see how things used to be done before the advent of DCC. K-28 now leads a passenger train around the Ophir Loop.
Well, it comes down this
Oh yeah.
Picture him not in the picture. He's getting a picture right
Despite the system seeming antiquated, I really enjoy the idea of PFM sound, especially the aspect of the quillable whistle, which is something that we don't get even in DCC. Next, I was off to Jim Chittick's and his OM3 model of the Oahu Railway in the 1920s. Jim's models of the various equipment used for the hauling of fruit such as bananas and pineapples, as well as his modeling of sugarcane operations, are very unique indeed, and not something often seen in narrow gauge modeling. Prior to my visit, my knowledge of the Oahu Railway was very limited. Really, I only knew that it existed. But through my visit to Jim Chittick's layout, I was illuminated to the wide variety of operations and equipment present on the railroad, such as the railroad purchasing standard K-28s directly from Alco. The modeling of the sugarcane operations was very interesting indeed, with Jim using Code 55 microengineering HO scale track and removing every other tie, as well as, of course, scratch building and 3D printing various models of sugarcane cars and equipment. In place of mule wagons, Jim uses small porter locomotives to move the sugar from the fields to the processing plant. And while not prototypical, it was really interesting to see the complex track work present on the layout, such as the double crossovers and double slip switches. For the last layout of the day, it was off to Golden for a visit to Ron Kaiser's indoor FN3 scale layout. I was drawn to this particular setup because most people associate FN3 scale with outdoor garden railways. However, this was chosen to be built indoors, and Ron Kaiser did an amazing job of detailing and weathering the locomotives and rolling stock, which is quite easy given their large size. And while I'm in my 20s now, I won't always be, and I don't see my motor skills and eyesight getting better with age. So seeing these big trains is really giving me a lot of inspiration for future possible modeling endeavors.
Yes, you did. You went back to take care of your parents for a year.
I'd come back to
Oh, no, I'm living. Not quite in Canada. About 20 miles south of here. Makes us look civilized. Oh my God, they're nothing like the Canadian side. When you get north of where I am, I'm pretty much in. You get to
Right, but before you get to the lake, the line goes straight north. No, no, it goes to the lake, yeah. It goes to the lake, right, it hits the lake, that's what it's called. It hits the lake, but then it goes north. And it goes
The reason the mills were built, they were built the same time as the houses. All went to the junction. And it's all brought up by truck. Everyone's 2 miles away from the plant to the mills.
buy that lumber
They're not
for
bad
them,
figures.
but you couldn't charge them.
Went to 20.3 anymore.
Yeah,
It's like,
I guess
really,
it
you
was
got it
so-
started. Well, and even AccuCraft, it's pretty much you want.
Tribe was supposed
It's
to
going to
keep track
be
of
steep,
the
life
gas
steep.
and they only got the to the civilians.
Among the many interesting aspects present at the convention center was this foam model of locomotive number 191, of which the prototype is present at the Colorado Railroad Museum. It's now Friday, and we start the day off by looking at some trains on the various modular layouts at the convention center. Then it's off to the Colorado Railroad Museum in Golden, where we get a look at Rio Grande F9 number 5771, which famously hauled the Rio Grande Zephyr between Salt Lake and Denver. Next we see K37 number 491 getting steamed up in the roundhouse ahead of its duties at the museum that day. Also in the roundhouse, we see Denver and Rio Grande consolidation number 318, as well as 3 of the galloping geese used on the Rio Grande Southern. We then see a Colorado and Southern rotary snowplow. Followed behind that by a Denver and Salt Lake slopeback switcher and caboose. Next we see RGS number 20, with its passenger consoles pulling into the loading platform for its first trip of the day around the museum grounds. We see the actual prototype for the 191, of which its foam model was on display at the convention. Next, we see two former Westside Lumber Company shays, which were given to the museum after their service on the Georgetown Loop Railroad. I was graciously led inside the layout of the Denver Garden Railroad Society, where I caught this K-36 and passenger train pacing alongside a Rio Grande Southern galloping goose. RGS 20 and train climbed the hill for the loading area and pulled to a stop to take on water. K-37 number 491 is steamed up and idling on one of the garden tracks at the roundhouse. The locomotive was open for tours of the cab prior to its run around the museum later in the day. We see RGS number 20 and train approaching the crossing at the main entrance. The one and only Mark Huber is at the throttle, and you can tell by his signature style of whistling. We see a Rio Grande SD40T-2 number 5401 on display near the roundhouse, along with 683, the last remaining Rio Grande standard gauge steam locomotive. RGS 20 and train again cross the main entrance crossing. Despite it being narrow gauge, the cab of a K-37 is actually quite spacious, given that the cab and boiler did come from a standard gauge locomotive.
Oh yeah.
And you can tell it's hot in the cab of a steam locomotive when you step out into 100-degree heat, and it's a relief. We see some much smaller live steam engines going around the live steam section of the Denver Garden Railroad Society. And on the other loops of track, we see several other standard track and battery powered garden scale trains making their rounds. RGS number 20 again climbs out of the boarding area for another round around the museum. For its next run, I'd take position on the other side of the tracks as RGS 20 makes its way up the hill. Among the more interesting and unusual pieces of equipment at the museum are a diesel-powered cog rail car and an original cog steam locomotive from the Pikes Peak Cog Railway. And of course, what's a visit to the Colorado Railroad Museum without a look at 5629, the largest engine in their collection. In the basement of the depot, the Denver Model Railroad Club has their HO and HON3 setup. There were various freight and passenger trains of both scales operating on the layout at the time of my visit.
I think that what they did for the industry was great, but yeah.
Let's take a ride around the museum behind RGS 20, once again with Mark Huber, otherwise known as Hyce, at the throttle.
A lot of the technology has multiple lives. I originally started with service on the Rio Grande Southern, but prior to that it's ran on the Cripple Creek and Victor, so Cripple Creek The North and Cripple Creek Railroad, which ran up Adams Canyon from Florida to Cripple Creek and Pickens. And that kind of started with another business in the major towns of Florida and Washington. And it was bankruptcy and sold that into some of the real which originally was and inside a little bit of the different railway setup. The elevated track was actually for running live steam engine, and the one there was still being that. And the lower track was used to electrify on the inside of the new bed of the refrigerator side, which is our tool with from Harrison. Here's an REH clip, which is a more modern one. That technology is pretty nice on the refrigerator side that uses the food
It was an honor and a privilege to get to meet the man behind the Hyce YouTube channel, which is arguably the most influential channel bringing old school railroading to a modern audience, as well as the main developer behind Studio 346 and the game Century of Steam. Next, it was off to Longmont, where I got to visit a layout that has been a major influence on my own style of modeling and my own Sierra Central Railroad concept. That being Doug and Barbara Geiger's Granite Mountain Railway. After watching the old Alan Keller video depicting the layout as it was in the mid-1990s, I knew that this style of railroading was what I wanted to replicate and model in my own endeavors. The Granite Mountain Railway is a freelance line running between the Rocky Mountains and the Pacific Northwest, essentially approximations of Denver and Seattle. You will see numerous run-through power of various roads such as the Burlington Northern, Rio Grande, etc., as well as a section of narrow gauge, which was why it was included during the narrow gauge convention.
transmission's going down 156, so we got a 50 in the east. So he should be able to clear all functions. Also, if you need.
On the south track of Mossy, that means north track, John. Over. Okay.
Green at the next place? Yes, okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure that one's working yet, though.
Yeah. He has a very interesting railroad, 'cause it starts in on the Embarcadero, and the next stop is Salida, Colorado.
Oh.
Okay, the way that thing works, John, is it should be a latch code button. The code button is underneath the normal code button. Push that in, and then you code the regular code button.
Snowshoe and Here you go.
Gave me an hour, but we'll, we got flag on
You can go with Rod.
narrow gauge passenger calling the dispatcher, over. I'm the passenger, so I need to be able to get in from Alpine City into North Track Mossy, please, over.
Yes, I'm narrow gauge freight, and I'm in the back parking the back side.
And now those narrow gauge pronouns are going up again. Let's do it again.
suppose.
So if you do that, ask to go to the south track over there, 'cause that's the.
We're gonna see.
Probably you're gonna have a problem with John. Go out. Let him know what's going on.
Okay. Hey Doug, I was wondering, you know the logic better, but if we
Cut off, so I'm gathering, am I gonna come out here?
you come out,
Okay.
right over there, you've got a green.
You got it right, here I am.
This is interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder where he's gonna make the meet. Cause this,
Excuse me?
We see a Granite Mountain manifest meeting a Burlington Northern coal train on the high mountain section of the layout, which in itself was the main inspiration for what would ultimately become the Sierra Central.
One by one.
The height of the need from the pit from
it's probably a CD. You're right, I hear it now, I've seen it coming.
Yeah, I mean, it makes noise. This is we're kind of in the middle of the layout right here.
Yeah, I'm going to find one end and go from there, I think.
So if you go straight.
Get rid of some of these clothes.
What?
And for the last scene, we see a bizarre but truly unique sight of a narrow gauge passenger train led by a steam locomotive meeting a Granite Mountain manifest led by a pair of GP40-2s. This scene, while out of the realm of possibility for so many people, is one of the aspects that make the Granite Mountain Railway such a unique model railroad.
This layout is really built into the operations. And then the gauge is part of the operations too.
Not only that, but Doug Geiger also employs a real CTC machine on his layouts, which include physical relays that transfer the electrical signal from the machine to the actual signal on the railroad and back again.
Okay, you've already talked by the
North track in Lasher Rock and West Control Park, Lasher Rock, over.
Copy. Thanks, John.
Then it was off to Greely for an unfortunately short visit to the Colorado Model Railroad Museum. I was only able to stay for about half an hour, as they were close to closing time, but I still got to see a whirlwind tour of their Oregon, California, and Eastern layout, as well as see several trains go through some of the iconic scenes, such as this Southern Pacific and Great Northern reefer train passing through one of the river canyons. An Oregon, California, and Eastern manifest crosses one of the large trestles on the layout before the town of Derry, before crossing the iconic High Bridge scene.
Mute. As you can see, the Colorado Model Railroad Museum, thanks to the immense size of their layout, is able to run prototypically length trains. We now take a brief look at the Coos Bay section of the layout, which is a large port scene served by a branch line from Klamath Falls. We see the Edmund Fitzgerald getting ready to take on ore at the dock. We also see several other model ships in the port, along with their interactive model of an EMD F7's cab. You will also see the Fowler car system in use at the museum. At Nasty Flats, just outside of the town of Lakeview, we see a Rio Grande manifest crossing the drawbridge. The manifest then ducks into the extensive staging yard located behind the main layout. In one of the display cases, we see a unique Kitson-Meyer type locomotive. And it's not every day that you see a real boxcar carrying the name of a fictional railway. Back at the convention center, we take a look at some of the trains running on the various modular layouts before calling it a day.
Hopefully.
You know, aliens have a way of making it short enough.
And to cap off the experience, I got to run my Seiwan Central K27 on the Mud Hens modular layout during their operating session at the convention. On Saturday morning, I spent the last few hours of the convention running trains both on my own San Juan Central as well as the Oklahoma Modular Group's layout.
Well, Don said he wanted to talk to you.
With mere hours to spare, I picked up a new toy, a Blackstone model of K27 number 455 post-rec. And with the convention over and layout put away, it was time to make the long drive to Chama, New Mexico, but not without a stop at David Varney's layout to see the unique pieces of rolling stock that he has kept bashed. Stay tuned for the fourth and final installment where I ride the Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad.